Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Silmarillion Film Project. This is session number 31 of Season 6. We are, in fact, come to the end of our episodes tonight. Tonight we are talking about episode 13, the culminating episode of Season 6. It is time to head to Mandos and finish our season arc and finally figure out what Escape from Bondage means. So here we are in episode 13. After tonight, there'll be 2 more episodes. We're going to talk about art and we're going to talk about music, but tonight we finish the narrative. Very exciting. Glad to have Nick and Marie with me again. Welcome, guys. And Nick, you wrote this the script for this one, right?
About that. I would say that there's been more collaboration on this script than anyone previous, which makes sense. This is it, right? Like this is the center of the center. Yeah. And more people were going to have more thoughts and feelings about what this should be and look like than just about anything else that we're going to have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. It's kind of felt like all season long, right? It's been like, but this episode, like, this is the big episode, and like almost every single week, it's like, no, wait, this is the big episode, but this is the one, right? We've come this is the one, and especially since like there's some which were like more exciting. I mean, everyone was looking forward to the song battle with Sauron and Finrod. Everyone's looking forward to, Huon kicking Sauron's butt. Everybody looking forward, to like cutting the Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. But come on, like, this is not only the culmination, it's also the hardest part. Like, this is a really, really difficult episode. What? I just want to acknowledge that.
No.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you thought it was a piece of cake, Nick. But
of course.
I will just say that, I mean, it's I think, especially as a culminating episode, right? Like, let's, am I right in thinking that there was less action in this season finale than in any other season finale we've ever had?
Yes, that is correct.
I mean, usually there's a we were doing the Dagger Aglareb last season,
yes. Which, right, like, and that's kind of my forte,
right. Yeah, season 1
stuff like that.
War to Begin All Wars. Season 2, Darkening of Valinor.
Yeah.
Season 3, The Sunrises.
But there we got Mithras.
There was a standoff before that, but there wasn't a battle.
There wasn't a battle. But so even things like Fingolfin arriving and beating on the gates of Angband.
Yeah, there was a beating on the gate thing.
Yeah.
Then season 4, Glaurung appears and Galadriel gets married. And then season 5, obviously we had Fingolfin versus Morgoth.
Come on.
That's a bit of a fight.
Yeah, and it's in addition to all of that, I cannot stress enough how much Marie personally did here, because it got to a point where I was running out of time and I'm just speed writing through the thing. I'm like, I don't even have time to deal with the format. I'll deal with that later. I'm just going to get the words out and then I'll go back and fix the format. And then I noticed I was about halfway through and I see Marie just like fixing the format,
following behind you as I'm going.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my god. So just like, it was so much work. There was something, there's like 500 some odd edits on this script,
right? And
the vast majority of them are just Marie indenting things to where they're supposed to be.
Many manual indents.
Which yes. Well, because I've always manually formatted my scripts because I don't like the way that the plugins do it. I hate it. And it's not, to me, it doesn't feel like it's that much faster anyway, because I still have to tell it what everything is.
Right.
And so, but Marie, you single-handedly rescued my Sunday, and I cannot thank you enough.
It is awesome. It's always.
Well, you're welcome. I mean, you're usually in the role of an editor, but this time you were the role of the writer, so you got to enjoy some editing.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Awesome. So we're gonna talk our way through the action-packed episode 13 here this evening. First, quick update. So many moots coming up. It is awesome. So we have Myth Moot, of course, is the big thing, which will be happening next week. A week from this very evening, we will be in Leesburg, Virginia, beginning Myth Moot 10, Homeward Bound. Still time to join us, especially if you want to join us remotely. I believe technically you can still join us in person if you would like to, though we're beginning to reach the point where last-minute plans are a bit much to ask. However, you can always join us remotely, and remember that if you sign up for remote attendance at any one of our moots, you get access to the full archived recordings of the whole thing, which for Myth Moot is especially useful because there are like 3 different tracks going on all the time, and even if you are present, you can't, you can't even hear half the stuff. So, but you get access to recordings of everything, which has taken, since we started doing that, it's taken so much stress out of Myth Moot. Like, I used to be paralyzed every time. It's like there are 3 different panels to go to, and like I know people in every single panel, and I want to go, and but I have to be in a room or other. There were even once or twice when I just I couldn't go to any of them. I'm like, I can't choose. I can't. Anyway, but it's awesome. It's so nice now to be able to know that we'll get access to the recordings. Our fall slate of regional moots has filled right up here. We've got 5 fall moots planned this year. Several of which, 2 of which are brand new, and 1 of which is coming around for only the second time. We begin and end with a brand new moot, Cascade Moot in Portland, Oregon, on September 23rd. And then we end in Bayou Moot down in New Orleans on December 2nd. So both of those, we've never been there before. In the middle, we've got Middle Moot on October 14th, which is our longest running moot. In the middle of that, we have the wily veteran there in the middle, and then the next week, New England Moot up here in Derry, New Hampshire. I love the New England Moot design. The New England Moot folks are really leaning into the fact that they're like closer to Halloween this year, so they're like, it's like the spooky moot this year. New England Moot is. And then Mountain Moot back out in Denver, Colorado again for the second year. So glad to head out to Denver again for Mountain Moot. So, and then of course we're already looking at moots for the spring as well. We've got, well, for the new year in any case. Osmoot definitely happening in Australia again, down in Sydney, the end of January, and Sunshine Moot going to be happening in February, I believe, this year, back in Orlando, Florida, in the Orlando, Florida area. So, anyway, so yeah, it's going to be a busy moot year, and we are still talking about another big new moot on a new continent that we have never been to before, and that is Brazil, South America, going down to Sao Paulo, Brazil we're working on that. It's in the works. Not ready to announce dates or anything yet, but I think it's going to happen, and I'm pretty excited about it. So, time to brush up on my Portuguese. So, I say brush up as if I have any Portuguese. I don't, but it'll be fun to learn. All right. So many things happening, coming up soon. Looking forward to this. Now, we get all of Beleriand again. We're panning back because we don't actually care about any of it in this episode. So we're kind of looking at it from a distance. This is the one where we leave Beleriand behind. First episode to take place mostly in Valinor since season 2, right? So this is season 3. We got the very, very, very beginning of season 3. We're still in Valinor.
The creation of the sun and the moon would have been the last time we spent a significant chunk of time in Valinor.
Right.
So that's season 3.
Right. And even that wasn't like a whole episode. It was just like we just stopped in.
We were cutting between that and Beleriand for that episode.
Yeah. So, and of course, visiting a place in Valinor we've never been before. Right? We haven't been inside Mandos, have we?
Only glimpses.
Okay. Yeah,
very brief glimpses.
The closest we've been to inside Mandos up to this point has been the imprisonment of Morgoth.
Right.
Melkor at the time. Doing push-ups in his cell and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And I believe we got a glimpse of Muriel in there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's basically it.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, I won't say, I'll wait till we get there. I won't segue to that. But that leads me to like one of the little requests I would have on revision of this episode.
I see.
I love the cameos. Like more cameos. I want more cameos. That was, yeah. Angrod was so much fun. I was like, oh man. Oh yeah. Oh, this is, anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. All right. So our A plot, crushed by grief after Baron's death, Luthien lays down her life and seeks out his spirit in the halls of Mandos. That's our A plot, of course. The B plot is the ripple effect on the rest of Doriath, in particular, the winter of Thingol. And then, of course, setting things in motion for future seasons, right? As we have Emeldir leading the House of Beor up to Dor Loman so that Morwen and Rian can find husbands, Sauron going to the east so he can find something to do, and Glaurung begetting children so that we can one day have fights in the sky with Silmarils. So lots to, and then of course we need to stop by Himring to check in on our fun Feanorian friends and incipient plans for next season. So
Yes, all the Sons of Fëanor are in this episode.
it's the first episode with all 7 Sons of Fëanor in a long time. Yeah.
Since season 3.
Exactly. That's been good. Yeah. Sorry, I was just imagining what the Fëanor cameo would look like. You know, him in his little solitary confinement cell, you know, kind of standing stubbornly in the corner. But anyway, okay, all right. Ooh,
On fire.
on fire, yeah, exactly. Still on fire. Okay, so lots of mourning in Doriath. So I really liked the juxtaposition of past and present. I thought that worked really. I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was a really interesting way of, capturing not just like her. Okay, I've been looking forward to thinking through this a little bit more because it was one of those things. As I was reading it, I was like, okay, that's really interesting, but I need to process this more. So help me process this more. So on the one hand, visually, there is a persistent juxtaposition between day and night, between morning and evening, between sun and moon. That kept happening. That kind of juxtaposition kept happening. So on the one hand, it's clearly suggestive of her own grief, her own shadow, her own sort of nightfall, and the memory of the earlier things. Though it's interesting because, of course, like the dancing in the moonlight, the moon and the moonlight is emphasized in the text about the earlier stuff, right? That's hardly a sunshine only affair, right? But obviously, it works well as a sort of even sort of quasi symbolic juxtaposition between, the now and the earlier there. Tell me some of the ideas that you guys had as to what you were wanting to invoke through the juxtapositions of her current state of grief and her earlier memories.
One of the things that came out of the discussion was kind of the realization that because the way that Elvish memory works is so different than ours, when Luthien looks at a place that has strong emotional connections to her, she's not just like, oh yeah, like it's not nostalgia or something like that. It's she relives it,
right?
Literally, right. Yeah,
that sense of not just like having that emotion prompt you to turn inward and picture it in your own head, but almost that sense of her projecting it outward, right?
Yeah.
In a quasi-Farian drama kind of way. There was a moment, actually, in which I wasn't sure whether Beleg or Mablung might not be able to see it themselves.
Yeah.
But I think she would have had to be singing in order to make that happen, presumably,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I did kind of intentionally want that question to be on the table, because there are places where someone's internal monologue definitely like gets out, like escapes.
Right.
Right? It happens with Thingol later on, and we can talk about that when we get there. So the idea that for the elves, that line between imagination and memory and reality is not as clearly demarcated as it is for us.
Right. Yes. One of the things I'm, as I say, there's still a bunch of stuff that I'm processing there. When it became clear that Mablung and Beleg couldn't, in fact, see the visions that she was seeing, the memory visions that she was seeing, and by the way, I love how that kind of got picked up later on when Thingol is having auditory memories and Melian can hear them.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
and Melian responds to what it took me. I actually did a double take and scrolled back up to read that again. I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah, because and even in to a viewer, so in the text, it's only the only difference is it's going from voiceover to off screen. Right.
Yeah, and I missed that. I missed that.
Right.
Yeah.
And in practice, all it would be is a subtle change in the audio quality. Right. To denote that she is in fact in the room now. Right.
I would think we would have to accompany that with Thingol turning his head or something in order to give some kind of signal that that had happened, or that it was different. Yeah. And then she walks on, right? So I mean, it's.
Yeah. We see her an instant later. Yeah. To indicate that she is in fact there.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. That was cool, and again made me. But so here's the reactions of Beleg and Mablung. What is your understanding of while Luthien is having her moments, right? Mm. Which, speaking from a human standpoint, we might call hallucinatory moments, right? When she's having these sort of visionary. But again, as you say, elf memory works differently, right? So one of the things that I was thinking, I was like, okay, so would they, even if they can't see it, even if she's not actually visually projecting these images in a way that they can see, which again, elves apparently can do, but not in this case necessarily, as it's an internal, private thing. But they would have some, how they're processing what's happening with her, right? There were moments when they kept coming to her and being like, are you okay? Are you with me here? And she wasn't with them, right? She's walking somewhere else. But I was thinking wouldn't they have some clue what was going on here? Surely this has to be some kind of known elvish phenomenon that they could parse from the outside, if you see what I mean.
Well, it's a question of how often does this actually happen, especially for the Elves of Doriath. It's not unlikely that no one has died. It is not unreasonable to think that nobody. Well, that's not entirely true. They've had people die in fights and whatnot.
Sure, we just saw Karkaroth, house some folks in the last episode. But yeah, no, you're right. It's not. This is certainly not.
But between the girdle going up and that incident with Karkaroth, hundreds of years have passed.
Yeah, and maybe a half dozen people
since the battle with the Green Elves, not against the Green Elves, but
the battle in which the Green Elves died.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and that was followed by the girdle going up and fighting the spiders. There were deaths.
Yeah, hunting incidents though.
There have been elves on the March Warden side who went and fought Tevildo's cats and didn't make it. Right. Like there's been deaths.
Handful of incidents, yeah.
But yeah, this isn't a normal thing. The issue is the distinction between Luthien experiencing the grief firsthand and Beleg and Mablung and the other elves trying to deal with her grief on a secondhand level, because really nobody else in Doriath cares that Baron has died.
Right.
They just met the guy. They're getting to know him. They're sad he's gone. But the only person who's really, truly grieving Baron is Luthien.
Yeah.
So we're seeing them respond to her grief and trying to help her and not necessarily knowing how serious it is.
Right.
Yeah.
They can guess, but that's part of the let's just try and pull her out of it. Let's try and give her a task to do.
And also, like the Silmarillion specifically calls out that and this happens in the scene with Mandos much later, that their sorrows were not her sorrows. Like other people have been through this, sure, but the text is very clear. It has never been like this. These two people have literally gone to hell together and come back.
Yeah, and are facing a kind of separation that literally no husband and wife in the history of Middle-earth has ever faced.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one advantage of bringing up the elven memory idea is that at the end, Luthien's going to be presented with two choices, one of which she's going to ignore, and the second of which she's obviously going to take, like obviously to the audience and anyone who has watched her through this episode.
Right.
But the first one is you'll still have the memories. So we kind of had to show what those memories were.
Thanks.
To show why that's maybe not what she wants her eternity to look like.
Right.
Just to kind of show, not tell the audience what that choice means.
Okay, yeah. So we're showing Luthien get the the free 10-day trial period on the infinite memories before she commits to buying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And to show the viewer Luthien's grief from her perspective. Because we could have just shown Luthien walking around really sad.
Yeah.
For this entire first act.
Right.
But no one would actually feel sad seeing her do that.
Right.
Unless they knew why she was sad. So part of that is to try to draw the viewer into her experience of happy memories switched with he's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. There was one element that I was missing, but it's possible that I was just it might be my fault that I was
just missed it.
I might have just missed it. So it seems to me there are three elements in Luthien's point of view, attitude, mental state at the beginning of in Act 1, which I think need to be brought in and kind of balanced. One is like, my husband died and I am sad. Like that's like the grief of parting.
Everyone gets that.
Yeah, everyone gets that. That one is straightforward. The second is the one that we were just mentioning, like bringing home. She's sad, but she is sad in a way which is different. There's something else at stake for her here than in any other. I mean, there have been a number of widows so far, in already in film, and why is she different? Like, what makes her widowhood different? And partly this was set up in the previous episode, right, with the discussions about mortality and the but there the emphasis was on, like, from Galadriel, it's going to be hard for you to live the next 100,000 years after Baron's gone, I realize. So like, but you know, enjoy your 15 minutes and then come hang out with me and we can talk about the next, 100,000 years. But I guess the focus in the last episode was all on Luthien, the rest of Luthien's life. It was less on the ultimate parting, right? The ultimate. It was like, which is like, and I'm not that, I don't say that as a criticism of the last episode. I'm saying that seems to me to be like the imperative thing here. She knew he was mortal. She knew he was going to die. Right. Sooner or later, but this was way, way sooner, needless to say, even than anyone anticipated. They knew he wasn't going to be around for long, but not literally days. Right. But then once he dies, like now she is processing this time.
The reality. Yeah.
The reality of like, it's not just, oh man, he's gone. To some extent, she's prepared for that. Like, she's not dumb, right? I mean, she knows what she's picking up what Galadriel's putting down, right? Everyone else, she wasn't choosing to focus on it on her wedding day, so she was a little less keenly aware of the difference in their life expectancies than many of the others around her. But still, that was known. The thing that she, I think, again, is sort of processing, if not for the first time, then certainly tasting the reality of is, and I am separated from him the way that no, widowed person has ever been separated from, or ever will be, so far as I know, separated. That even coming back to some of the language, what would be really fun if it could happen is like a mirroring of that Andreth language, instead of like two hands reaching across the abyss, like, and now an abyss is opening up, between our hands, that which had clasped, our hands had been joined, and now an abyss has opened up between them. I don't know that you need to actually use the words, but that kind of thing, right? This, even think even of the way in which, though in hideous mockery, the idea of reunion in death is still even flung at Gorlim, right? That he is granted by, in the text by Sauron, in Silmarillion by Thorin Gwethel, to be reunited with Eilunel, right, in death, or through death. And again, like, that's no kindness is meant there, but still, like, the idea of, that widowhood has an ending, the widower state, still, like, the time will come when. Now, the humans don't know, and I know this comes up, of course, right, with Baron, in Mandos, like, so are the humans, and, I love Baron's little moment of like, well, we must remain technically agnostic, as we really don't know, like, we don't believe we're going off into eternal separation, but like, we have to admit we have no firm data on this point.
That doesn't mean that we should like go around and kill each other on purpose to get us there.
Exactly. Like, yeah.
So for this realization that there's a chasm between them, does she need to express this while she's alive, or is it okay to have that be a focus in Mandos?
So
I can tell you it's tough because she first starts getting real lines like with in Hero the Lorn. Scene where she dies.
Mm-hmm. But it's with Hero Lorn.
It's with Hero Lorn.
And she does say, so the reference to this that does exist is when she's after she talks about how she has attempted to bind Baron even temporarily to Ea, when she says, but I must see him again. I must, even if only for a little while, even if I should lose him for a second time to eternity beyond the veils of the world.
Right.
So she does reference that, but if we want something more than that, we could even enter it visually in one of the scenes where like maybe in the scene where she's remembering them dancing together, mm-hmm. and to actually have their hands be pulled apart. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
could at least visually start to put that idea in.
Yeah. Yes. Icon is suggesting it could be within the song you so kindly shoved on the music department. Yes, but I would think that that would be the culmination, not the introduction of the idea. You know,
Okay.
And this is why I think so. I would I don't know how, but I would kind of want to introduce it in Act 1 somehow. I would want to plant it in Act 1. And there are two reasons I would want to plant it in Act 1. One is because it seems a sort of a 3-stage dealing with this issue seems good. Like, first, just the sheer blank emotional reality of the fact, right? The grief deeper than any grief has ever been at the beginning, right? Then stage 2, walking and talking with the shade of Baron and thinking it through and working it out, and then putting it into song and seeing, and because the way that what she does in her song, right? She captures the grief of Ardamard. Like she like distills and crystallizes the grief of Ardamard. And that seems this whole concept, right? This whole of like the separation by death of elves and men is like itself a kind of, cornerstone of that entire, like, almost not quite image for, not quite symbol of, not quite example of, but kind of all of those things, right? Of the whole, like, it is in a nutshell what is wrong with Ardamard, right? It is a deep, deep glimpse into that. And she puts that through, right? There you go, Icon. How hard is that? Seriously, come on. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. So if you want the first step, what we currently have is an idea that eventually Baron Spirit's going to pass beyond the veils of the world and be separated. Right. We could visually add the dancing being interrupted by being torn apart.
Right.
And if you want more vocabulary, like what you're suggesting, something along the idea of Baron's song of that Luthien for a time shall be, right? That the world is good because Luthien's in it.
Yeah.
We can turn that whole thing around as that the world is terrible because Baron's not in it.
Right.
And that they're forever separated by this chasm or veil or what have
and
you.
that the loss that she's experiencing, that she's able to sing the song that she is, because the loss that she experiences, which is unique among the losses ever suffered by anybody, right? Because theirs is the first union of the two kindred, and that therefore leads to this unique, never before experienced loss. But that loss is what enables her to see, in a way that none of the Eldar have ever before seen, what the like real grief of Ardamard is, in a sense. You see what I mean? Like this is how she. This is what enables her to sing that song. This is what enables her to kind of process that in that way.
We can definitely find places to punch that and make that more.
I said there were two reasons. The other reason is simply that there's a risk, especially in the context of Silmarillion. I mean, there have been so many widows. There's been so many tragedies. We've killed a whole lot of characters already in this show, right? And there's a sense in which, and I'm not saying that this is the, like the obvious sort of reaction. I'm not saying I would expect everybody to have this reaction, but I could imagine somebody saying,
"Oh, boo-hoo."
Boo-hoo. Like, yeah, exactly. Come on. Like, go back to, what's her name? The Ethelwith, the wife of Angrod.
Ethelwith.
Oh, Derio.
Ethelwith, yeah.
Oh, Ethelwith.
Ethelwith, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, come on, like, you think you had it bad, Ethelwith or Derio, right? I mean, like, come on, there's like so many people who have suffered so much more and so much longer.
Gorlin and Eilenel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, come on, so like, it's anyway, I could imagine. I just think it's important to make sure that we are conveying, like,
She's not just a drama queen.
She's not just a drama queen, right? It's
Yeah.
not just that like she is a widow, as many have been before her, but for some reason Luthien can't handle it. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, as I say, I'm not saying that it has that effect. I would just want to make sure we protect against that effect. Is all I'm saying.
For the specific reason that she's about to die of grief.
Right. Right.
And that's already not quite how humans work.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Unless they're Rion. Unless they're Rion.
Right. And
although in reality, she probably dies of starvation.
Yeah, I was going to say her, the coroner would probably not put grief on the death certificate there.
Right.
No.
So that's what I meant by that's not quite how humans work. Yeah. You can die while you're grieving, but it's not a cause usually.
Right.
Or not the only cause. So that's already an outside human experience thing that Luthien's going through, and she lays down and dies.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a suicide? No, but was it not a suicide? Like it's gonna feel weird, to the audience a little bit. Anyway, it's a strange death. So more context before she dies would help. Put the death in that context as well.
Yeah, I was even wondering. I'm not saying that this like should happen or needs to happen. But with Beleg and Mablung's conversations, I was wondering if like the prospect of her dying of grief would be like verbally explicitly raised, because I mean I was ready for it, of course, but it's not only just because I know the story, but we've never shown an elf dying of grief before, have we? I mean, has that been a thing?
Muriel.
Oh well, but Muriel, look. Muriel is the original bad data point, okay? Like there's nothing about Muriel that's applicable to anyone else in the history of Middle-earth.
I mean, Luthien is a similarly bad data
point. She is, right? But like in this moment, it's
But I did consider that. One of the things I thought was that the idea of her dying of grief is for them would be an unfathomable loss. They can't even comprehend the possibility.
No, and that's when I was thinking that was my immediate second thought. That Beleg and Mablung aren't going to be like, well, hope she doesn't die of grief. Me too. Your move, right? Like that's not like that's.
Yeah, I was already getting a little flack for how callous it appeared that they were had the audacity to play a game while all this sadness was happening.
Right. Yeah, I agree with David Michael. I thought that her death in the arms of Hiralorn was awesome. I loved the death scene. That was really, really good. The duet that she's singing with Hiralorn there at the end is so cool. So cool. Tell me more about that. So she's because this was a really fun moment, but I was like, I wanted to like stop and ponder this, but I didn't have time. So she sings the Release from Bondage song that she sang.
Hiralorn.
Right, Hiralorn
sings
does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she sings back to Luthien the song that Luthien sang by which she convinced Hiralorn. And that was about letting go, right? Like letting go, like releasing, like your seeds and nuts and letting, the new seeds go and plant and become new trees. And
Luthien takes the exact wrong lesson away from that.
Right.
Because that is very clearly not the message. Like Hiralorn was not saying let go of life.
Right. But exactly. But it meant that what we got at the moment of her death at the end of Act 1, and this is what I loved so much about it, was that we got a direct juxtaposition between her expression of grief and the escape from bondage concept. Like that song to Hiralorn in, what was it, episode 5, was the, was like the escape from bondage song. Yeah, it was the Song of Hope and escape, the escape song. So Hiralorn is singing the escape song, she's singing the grief song, and the two of them are harmonizing, right? And that's so cool. I love that. But this brings me then to my big question about the grief of Luthien. I don't even know how to shape this. There's a bunch of things in this episode that are really.
I mean, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
One of the things that because I knew that people were going to feel really strongly about this episode.
Yeah.
And so I knew going in that there was almost no way that anybody was not going to have any notes for me whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
It's only the biggest deal ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Icon is pointing out, and I totally agree, that Luthien does the exact same thing in response to the Escape from Bondage song in both contexts, right? She escapes and follows Baron. She leaves the tree and follows Baron, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great. Again, love it. Loved that juxtaposition. I thought that was fantastic. Okay, here was the biggest question I was left with. And again, I'm still processing, but my biggest question was, what about their doom? And specifically, what about, does she have any perception of their doom?
So I was operating under the belief that now that the Noldor have come back from Valinor, the Sindar have an understanding of what happens to them when they die. Mm-hmm. Before the Return of the Noldor, they had no idea. As far as they knew, they died and they were dead.
Yeah.
It's not obvious when you're reading the Silmarillion, but until they get to Valinor, none of them know.
Right.
That they live on even after being slain. None of them know that.
It's true, because even if Thingol had been given an extremely thorough tour when he went over there weren't any dead elves there yet that we know of anyway. Exactly. I mean, again, somebody might have died elsewhere, conceivably, but yeah. Muriel wasn't there yet, right? There was.
There were some elves who had been killed by the hunter, including kin of Thingol,
right,
in the beginning of season 2.
That's true.
So there were elves in Mandos, but Thingol was not invited to take a tour of Mandos while he was visiting Valador. Yes. That was very clearly off limits.
Yeah.
I believe someone was like, "What's over there?" And it came up. That's where the dead elves were. And Ingwe was really curious about that, seeing as how his wife was dead.
Yes.
Right.
But other than that, they didn't get to go visit.
Look at us thinking to go into this way back at the beginning of season 2. I'd forgotten that. Yeah.
So that was one thing that was really nice about this episode, is that Nick did find a lot of ways to reference earlier parts of film.
Yes.
So I'm going through check.
Yeah.
So and as far as the fate of men, they know about as much as anybody else does, right? They don't know that men are going to, they don't know about the door. They don't know that humans go to Mandos for any length of time whatsoever. My sense going into this was that it was foresight on Luthien's part, that she just intuited that there was some way that she could hold Baron.
Yes.
And I don't think she thought it through. In no way did I ever want to give the impression that she had actually thought that through.
Right.
When he was dying, that she was panicked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And let me emphasize that what I'm talking about through this entire section, I want it understood that I am not in any way actually suggesting that we do anything to undermine the emotional power of Act 1. Right. And the conveying her grief, it's super important. If we don't get that, then we're not. But now here comes the but.
But having done that,
I want to make sure to establish that, and we'll keep coming back to it. However, there is the other side of it, right? Because there is a way there would be a path to telling this episode, to telling this story, in which Luthien is not crippled by grief at all, right? In which she says, okay, we knew a doom was laid upon us, right? We knew there was something we were supposed to do. I thought it was the recovery of the Silmarils, so this is why she goes to Beren and she's like, wait for me. And she's like, I gotta go. I gotta, like, Beren's waiting.
Right.
The thing, now I see the thing is yet to be done. The thing that we were to do, the doom that was laid upon us, what we're going to accomplish. Now I see it's over there. Right. So I gotta, I gotta head to Mandos, gotta do my doom thing. Peace out. I'm going. And in which, she's not, where it's not motivated by grief. Now, again, I'm not saying we don't want to remove the grief, but that element of it, that's kind of the core of my question there.
Okay, so just grief.
Yeah.
I could see how that would feel like I'm missing something here.
Right.
Simply a calculated move to go join up with Beren and accomplish the goal is also to be avoided.
Totally. Absolutely.
So
yeah.
Part of what we were having the issue on is if you introduce Luthien's got a plan,
right,
then it feels very calculated on her part, which doesn't seem to fit her character, doesn't seem to fit what's happening.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to tell the story as Luthien has a plan and she just needs to go meet up with Beren in the halls of Mandos and then it'll all work out. Because one, you couldn't tell the audience what the plan is.
Nope.
And as you just explained, Luthien doesn't even know what the plan is.
Doesn't even know what the plan is, yeah.
And the only tension in this episode is what's going to happen to these people. Are they going to get to be together? And if Luthien is from the very beginning of the episode, I have a plan.
Like sublimely confident, yes.
Then we, the audience, are going to be like, okay, I have no idea what's going on, but presumably Luthien's going to get him out of death here somehow.
As always,
right.
Luthien goes in and rescue.
She has succeeded at everything she's tried.
Right.
So at this point, to be like, Luthien's got a plan, it's like,
no, agreed. No, it shouldn't. It's not Luthien has a plan.
I did want to do what you're referencing, and I really struggled to find a way to do it. And we were there was a lot of push and pull on the drama of the final scene, and we're gonna get to all that. And making sure that scene played out in a way which maintained the dramatic tension without, because it is very easy to feel like, well, of course, this is what happens, right? So in order to, and then I found a way to have Luthien be led into the song by kind of a reminder of the
portentousness, yes,
of their meeting,
yes.
Which is then referenced in the song itself based on what I think the current interpretation of what the song is going to be is, because that I am not writing.
Okay. Yes, we do have a sort of well, not a hole so much as a socket in the middle of this episode where the song is going to be set. Yes. Yeah. I assume we're going to do that during the music episode. Is that the plan?
We shall see. That will be
perhaps I should say hope rather than plan.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
People are working on it. I do not know the current status.
Okay.
But people are working on it.
So here's my suggestion, Nick, for how it could be done.
Mm-hmm.
What if it is a realization that she has while Hirulorn is singing? What if the juxtaposition of her own grief and Hirulorn's song of escape from bondage and that releasing and new life theme from before? The other connection that I'm thinking of is the one that you already made, the if Luthien for a time should be moment with Beren, right? And remember that whole episode the focal point of, and it's that episode I was thinking about. Like it's that episode. For me anyway, the take-home message of that episode, which was 9, I think, right? Pretty sure, right before 10, which was Angband. The episode 9 message was, we will be together. No matter what we do, we will be together. Because it is our doom. Like we have a doom to pursue. You remember that was one of the major issues, right? The like, I want to keep you safe, but like we have to like, we can but follow our destiny and all that kind of thing, right? So that awareness of the doom that lay upon them, and then they end episode 9 with like, okay, let us A, stay together, and B, go to Angband, right? Let's go get the Silmaril. And in doing so, that was very much a we're doing this not because it's a prerequisite to being together, because here we are, right? But because it is what must happen. Like this is the path that we have been set on. This is the doom that lies upon us. So again, in that same light, so from episode 9 forward, it seems to me that those two things, on the one hand, like we are meant to be together as a couple thing, and there's a great doom that lies upon us thing, are joined. That's like the outcome of episode 9, fittingly the outcome of episode 9. And so for her she was understandably distraught by what has all appearances of the dissolution of their relationship, right, with his death, which then leads her to the utterly staggering and impossible fully to parse reality, right, of no, it's worse, right? Like the grief beyond the end of the world, the parting beyond the end of the world, that she had not even really processed at that point, which again should be in some sense coupled with a sense of wrongness, right? But no, that wasn't our doom. A heavy doom is laid upon us, and that doom involved our being together. This is not just sad. This is wrong in some sense, right? This is not how it should be. And then Hirelorn escape from bondage, the grief, like the response, the emotional response to, Hirelorn's sort of maternal embrace there. But then also the realization, like the escape from bondage, the realization, wait a second, it could come then at that moment, right? Having gone through all of this grief, that moment to realize, no, it wasn't our doom to go to it wasn't only our doom to go to Angband and reclaim the Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. Our doom is still ahead of us. We are, it's like she then realizes why she had thought she had asked him to wait for her, just like because it was like a spontaneous outcry of her own grief in the moment, right? Her own clinging to their relationship as it seems to be ripped away from them. But now she realizes, no, like there's something right about that. Like he is waiting for her and she should go, because their destiny lies there. So if she only like kind of has that realization in the moment of the song, and then she like has that release and then dies, right? And her body, because anyway.
So at that point in the story, we cannot go too far into that because of it gives everything away.
Yeah. Okay.
But we can introduce it.
Yeah.
So one thing to do is that concept of the story's not over.
Yeah.
There's something more to do. It wasn't supposed to end this way.
Right.
That kind of thinking matches the grief and doesn't sound like Luthien has a concrete plan to solve the problem.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Just this,
yeah.
something is wrong.
Something is wrong.
It's different. And then later on, when they're standing before Namo, and he's asking them why Baron was waiting for her and all of that, in that conversation, it can come out. Because he asked Luthien to explain it. So at that point, Luthien could say more about I knew we had a purpose. I knew we had something to do. It's not over yet.
Yep.
And so when I asked him to wait, that's why I was
Yeah.
asking him to hold on. There's
Yep, yep.
something more to do. I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So she can say it later.
Yeah.
So
She can feel it now.
You can feel it now. Yeah.
I was actually trying to hint at that through that very conversation, that there was something at work there, because like Namo's trying to figure out how did this happen? Like this is not supposed to happen this way. How did this happen?
Yeah.
And like I was trying to subtly hint at the fact that Eru is at work here. You know, like Luthien very clearly has a lot of juice. She's even able to impact the very structure of Mandos.
Right.
But even that is,
and then gets called to the principal's office for it afterwards.
Yeah. even that is part of Eru working through the world. But so what I would ask is that, can we do what you're talking about here in this scene and kind of couch it as a why, like, because that's a very human question that the elves don't tend to ask. Like, why did we go through all this? Why were we even here?
Right.
Why did we, like, why? Because clearly some great doom was laid upon Baron to even get him into Doriath in the first place. He shouldn't have even been able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And
right.
Yeah, and one of the other things, just picking up on another point that I really liked, but one of the things, so for two reasons, I loved the presence of the Silmaril. Like the repeated presence of the Silmaril in this episode, I loved it. First of all, because I just loved the way it's always by Thingol. Like it's always shining over, like the gorgeous radiance of the Silmaril shining over Thingol's shoulder like a rebuke. He kind
of loves and hates it.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, the way in which it's like a reproach to him continuously. Right. Loved that. The kind of the gorgeous Silmaril in its lovely setting, and like, but it is a source of torment to Thingol. I thought that was phenomenal. But the other thing is that it also seems to set up this larger question, right? That there's a great doom upon them. They're going to do something that's going to change the world. And for all appearances, it looks like they already have. Like, clearly, obviously, getting the Silmaril was it, right? That was the thing. And yet, we see the end of that. We see the fruit of that all the way through this episode. There it is. Silmaril acquired. You know, that's job complete. Mission accomplished. Doom achieved. And look how lame it is. Like, it's depressing. And like, you know, just that clear sense of like, that can't be it. That can't be it. Even if you're not aware of, as we've already, even before the last scene with the Feanorians, given people reason to remember that the acquisition of a Silmaril is only going to cause trouble, right? As he himself is remembering in the future. So like the audience too, should, like, there are these really pretty subtle hints to the audience to have uneasiness with the idea that the quest is achieved, mission is accomplished, their story is done, right? They've you know, the realization that Luthien comes to, no, wait, that's not what our doom was about. It's really about this. Is a thing that should resonate, I think. And so I love the way that the Silmaril was used as like a prop for that.
So if that's a tangent, that's fine. Or do you want to move on to talk about that? Or do you want to finish talking about Luthien and Hiralorn before we touched on that scene to any further degree?
There's so many things. Okay.
I know. It's a big deal.
I wanted to mention Thingol and the Silmaril because I loved that. The thing I'm shy about moving on from this slide about, but don't really want to segue to talking about now because it's a later question, but just help me to remember to talk about it before we get back, is Melian. Melian's realization of her mortality. I want to talk about that. But let's do Mandos first. Last things about Hiralorn that you wanted to say, to add in there?
No, I essentially, as long as it's kind of couched in a question
Yeah.
rather than a statement, because if
Oh
we
yeah, yeah,
start giving her
totally.
too
Fine. Yeah,
much
yeah.
confidence in
Yep.
what's
No, no, no.
going on,
Yeah.
yeah,
Not confidence. No, like the idea, like a version of this story in which Luthien is sublimely confident from one end to the next is a parody version of this story.
yeah.
But I was just trying to emphasize that
I really
element.
want to keep
Yeah,
her completely on her
totally.
back foot in a way that she's never been throughout
Totally.
this episode until the thing happens.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's oh, hang on a second. All right. No, we'll come back to the other stories. Let's go to Mandos. Okay. Okay.
I love the work that we've done to make clear, like, who this individual is that's guiding Luthien around.
Yeah.
Around Mandos.
Yeah.
Like that made that so much easier. Like, of course, we could just lean onto the imagery, right, and people would kind of get it.
Yeah.
But to kind of grant this understanding in a way that that wouldn't have been as clear.
No, I agree. That was a lot of fun. The one thing I was missing actually in that regard was I kind of wanted the Reaper Maya to show up at Hiralorn, basically, and call her over, like for her to be called over to Mandos instead of just showing up. But I mean, she was going there on purpose on the one hand, so like it's not like there was any question of whether. Yeah.
And it's also like that possibly did happen. We just didn't see
yeah, I know, but it was I just think of the parallel with episode 1, of course. Now of course we already get that, kind of closing that loop with the the plenty of activity showing the other side, right? Yeah.
Right. So most of this episode is seen from Luthien's point of view.
Yeah.
And something like that would maintain that. But for her death scene, it might be better for the audience to feel like she's gone.
Yeah.
Which is why we go to 2 other scenes before we show her waking up in Mandos.
Yeah.
We need to take Luthien off screen for a little bit.
Yeah.
No, I like that.
So if the Reaper showed up and Luthien as a spirit was interacting with the Reaper, she wouldn't feel dead to the audience.
Right.
And we want the audience to
feel the loss.
Yeah.
There needs to be a moment of mourning for Luthien by the audience. Yeah.
And the audience who isn't in the know, which I mean, like this isn't the world we live in anymore, but the audience who isn't in the know, like Luthien just died.
Right.
You just watched her die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. We don't know that we're gonna see more.
Right. It's like one of those moments, where I touch the screen of my iPad to see how much time is left in the episode.
Yes. Yeah, like what just happened?
Yeah.
You've been watching this thing for 15 minutes.
Exactly. It seems like a short episode. Is it just me? Yes. Okay. So that's fine. So she shows up in Mandos and she gets her tour. The tour was fun. The tour felt very Greek.
Yes.
Yes, it felt very Greek.
Yes.
I loved the Amrod cameo. That was
the Kinslayer's Ward.
The Kinslayer's Ward. Yeah. I loved that. I was so excited to see Amrod again that I was hoping for way more cameos. We got like the one cameo, and then we got like we were looking for another. Didn't get Finrod. Finrod was absent, right?
Mm-hmm. So, he already got his posthumous cameo. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And also we got to get the line from the Silmarillion in there, which I
liked.
Yeah. I also liked being able to refer to Celeborn the Wise.
Yeah, no, that was fun. That was great. Like, yeah, to have you know, folks over in Mandos being that Celeborn man, he knows what he's talking about. Like that's a guy who's got it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you know, whoever marries that guy's, you know, a lucky woman,
girl,
you know. Absolutely. So the thing that I loved about Amrod still being burned, just loved the way in which, like, because of course, like, presumably viewers would still bear psychological scars from his death scene earlier on, and so we'll remember his burning, and yet the way in which that's like reflected in his Fea, right, is pretty cool.
And the way in which he's being healed also, yeah.
Yes, so like that the burning of Amrod becomes sort of like posthumously a metaphor for like the which is very, very apt, right? Like Feanor's burning spirit, and you know, so the whole kinslaying thing, like the you know, burned with fire, the way that it retroactively makes Amrod's death into like a metaphor for the sin of the kinslaying, right? And the damage that the kinslaying does to the souls of those. That was awesome. Anyway, so I was so excited about that cameo and how that worked. I was like, more cameos. I was like, so here's, I mean, I think this has to be a rule, right? And this is like clearly, Homer and Virgil observe this rule, and Dante observe this rule very meticulously, and that is, you can't introduce a new section of the underworld and not have a famous person exemplar in it, right? Yes. So like having Amrod be the poster child of the Kinslayers ward, fantastic, right? But come on now, like if we're introducing other wards, like we need other representative elves.
Yeah, we've seen economy.
I know, but see, that's the beauty of this kind of cameo. Like you don't have to on screen 15 seconds.
For instance, in the ward where it's the adults who are playing like children.
Yeah. Give me somebody.
There's no reason you can't put somebody from the kinslaying.
Just a recognizable thing. Yeah. So
or literally any character we've killed to this point. Like you could have Ethelos, you could have Alway, you can have Galadriel's mom, you can have Fingolfin's sister.
Yep.
Like you can pick somebody and put them in that scene.
Yep.
Without calling them out, because Luthien wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, it's so and so about whoever it is.
Right.
But they can still be there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Would be fun to see Ethelos, you know, enjoying herself rather more than when last we saw her. That'd be nice.
That could be done. Okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
By cameo, that's all I mean.
I really like that, actually. Yeah.
A recognizable face. Again, this, you know, you don't have to go full, you know, full.
Here's the history of this character.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and let's go do an interview with him like Dante would. Like, you don't have to go there. Just we recognize somebody.
Let Ethelos have a nice day.
Let Ethelos have a nice day.
Arwen is a good one, but I feel like she's already gone. I feel like she's already made it out.
Maybe.
Yeah. Possibly. So.
I mean, she was kinslayed, which I imagine is pretty traumatic, but.
And she was part of the fight. She was shooting arrows.
That's true.
And
She's
leading troops.
Herself a kinslayer.
Therefore, technically a kinslayer. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's break the rule then. Let's have her in the kinslayer ward.
Oh.
So it's the Aqualande Memorial Ward is what it is.
Yes.
Anyone at Aqualande can hang out here.
Yeah, kinslayers
and victims
they
of
are
kinslayers.
kinslayers.
Man.
No, but I mean, yeah, if it's like presumably like innocents murdered at Aqualande wouldn't be there, right?
That's true.
But those who fought back and slew Feanorians, kinslayers, man. I mean, it's still going to hurt you. Like, it's still going to do damage. And again, that's what I mean, it's a hospital ward, right? This is not about like, it's not
punishment.
It's not punishment. Yeah. Right. They're not receiving punishment. They're all receiving treatment.
Yeah. And Yarwin is Galadriel's first cousin. So of all the people she meets, not Galadriel. That's Galadriel's mom. Luthien's first cousin. Luthien keeps meeting people she's related to.
But
Right.
she doesn't know who Arwen is. So the viewer, the canny viewer, who with a very long memory, will recognize her. But
yeah, but I did like that Luthien was related to almost everyone ever. Be like, as my cousin used to say.
Well, that is
and then
recurring
as my
theme,
other
yes.
cousin, who's like on a very different branch of the family.
Yes.
And then, my husband's family, who are all human. And,
right.
She knows literally everyone in Mandos because she's somehow connected to the whole world, apparently.
Yes. Yes. It's because she's Elrond's ancestor and so therefore is connected with everybody.
Right. Because clearly you only get to be written about in the Silmarillion if you're related to Elrond.
Exactly. He's the center of the genealogical universe.
Well, we're going to get there.
Exactly. We sure will. Yeah. Oh, David. Oh, yeah. He was thinking of Elenwe for the play ward. Yeah.
That's a good one.
I was actually thinking of Elenwe too, that she would be a fun person to see. Because it doesn't have to be just one. There could be multiple recognizable faces there.
But Luthien does specifically recognize someone, and she has met Edalas, which would make that easier. Whereas she's never met Elenwe, and so she would be talking about somebody else who's not the person we're seeing.
Yeah. Were there other wards? I'm blanking now. I remember the Kinslayer ward.
I think we went right from there to the Door of Mourning.
To the Door of Mourning. Okay.
Yeah. For the player of the Door of Mourning. Yeah.
Okay. So. So I didn't think that I was not prepared for like an additional layer of tragedy to the Aegnor and Andreth story. That was so horrible. That was so horrible.
Horrible is my best move.
Yeah. Yeah. And
again, Luthien wins at everything she does.
Yeah.
So trying to convince anyone watching the story play out that she's not just going to waltz in here and be like, I'm with him and we can be together.
Right.
We had to show what the problem is. And the only other couple available is Aegnor and Andreth. And conveniently enough, Andreth had to die in this episode.
Right.
To allow the House of Beor to migrate again. Just like Adonal had to kind of be like, I'm just going to retire here. You all can leave.
Right.
Same thing. So since she was dying anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was awesome. So the two things, I mean, just apart from the horrible, honestly, I was more broken up about Aegnor and Andreth reading it than I was about Luthien's sorrow at the beginning of the episode. But the thing that I really, because the two elements of it that I liked most is that, first of all, I mean, again, like the hands thing, right? To like recapitulate, to give like a new visual image of what it looks like for their hands to be reaching out to each other across the void, but failing to touch, right? That we got a new sort of visual on that was amazing. But we also get this clear sense of Luthien can see them both, right? She is not, there's Aegnor and Andreth, and she's not either, she alone can see them both. There's something different about her. Yeah. There's something different about her status. And so that's really sort of the first clear sense. I mean, the first hint that we got was when the Maya was like, whoa, you can see them? Like, I didn't expect that. Right.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
The humans cannot speak thing was tough because it was hard to do it without being a little hand wavy, and we originally came up with one hand wavy way, which was they can't speak in the presence of the door, And then I came up with a different hand wavy way, which is that they don't have leave to speak unless Mandos, like they cannot speak here at all unless Mandos gives them leave. And
it was so Homeric that I was just like, this is like the most Greek element of the entire thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't have a pool of blood for them to drink, to be able to unlock their tongues, but short of that, it was exactly. I mean, I was so straight out of the Odyssey. The one thing I didn't love was the like the touching the throat was kind of cool, but it felt a little too casual, you know.
I originally had a line there to explain what she was doing, which we kind of felt maybe wasn't really necessary because it's obvious what she's doing, right? Because then Baron begins to speak.
Yeah.
But maybe having the line gives it more momentousness.
Okay. The thing that I disliked about it was the fact that it gives the impression that the humans could talk and the people could make them talk anytime they wanted to. They just don't usually bother. But now they're like, oh, well, anyway, I guess we might as well let you speak. Yeah. So here, let's do that. So it didn't have the momentousness of it. Like, a human will be permitted to speak now for the first time. Like it was almost like, I'm going to hit the mute button and turn his sound on, right? Is what it almost had like that, which again, which doesn't convey this, like this is a big deal, right? So something, if his speech could be tied into the moment when we could blame it on Luthien, he could speak as soon as she does her thing that almost breaks Mandos. She could unlock his voice.
Oh, you can make Namo so mad. He's already like irritable with her, like,
and they get called to the principal's office, breaking all the rules.
Yeah, David, that specifically the original line specifically says that Namo grants you the the ability to speak specifically for this audience,
right?
So at least bringing that back would make it very, very clear that it's not just her that's doing that on her own.
But then again, like once he gets to speak just for that audience, they're chatting in the hallway all the way up, right? Like it's not just for the audience, really. I mean, it's not only to address Namo, in the trial or whatever.
Yeah. Right. He's granted speech from that point onward.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a bit of mercy implied in that.
Yeah.
Right. And that was my intention. It was kind of
part of the issue with giving lines to this Maya is that this is very much exposition Maya. So like here you see in the halls of Mandos, things work like this.
Yes.
Yeah. And so it's anywhere we can show instead of tell is great if it works. So if it's going to be something Luthien does and there's an obvious side effect, it's fine. If we want Namo to have control of his halls, maybe.
The reason I don't love giving Baron the power of speech when Luthien does the thing there is that I feel like if he says anything there, it's going to like break because it gets really tense really quick. Right? Like she nearly breaks the world, and now the Maiar are like actively like restraining her will in a way. It's not meant to be super obvious that that's what's happening, but
right.
And so I feel like if he opens up and starts talking there, like guys.
Well,
but that escalated quickly,
right? But what I like about it is that it mirrors her telling him to wait for her, right? So like basically she's recapitulating. She when he was dying, she says, "Wait for me," and then when he's about to pass through the gates, she says again, "Wait for me." Right? Like don't go. And so she's reasserting her connection with him. Right?
Okay.
And that connection with him, there's already something obviously different about her. She can see both the elves and the humans and everything, right? So when she reasserts her union with him, it actually does succeed in breaking the world. And what I think it's possible to imply there is that this is not just Luthien flexing and, threatening to break the world, but this is the doom. Like,
yeah. Well, no, that's right.
The doom has like she is speaking their doom, right? Like you cannot leave. Like it is our doom to be together. You cannot leave. Wait, I said, wait for me. Stay with me, and he does, and he speaks to her, and then then everyone's like, what the Mandos is going on here? Yeah.
Okay, so in that case, that eliminates the need for any hand waving whatsoever. They cannot speak. Period.
Yeah.
They cannot speak unless they cannot speak.
They can't speak.
We just take that completely out of the equation, and then him being restored the power of speech because of her reconnecting of that union.
It's the flip side of her being able to see both elves and humans, right? Like both of them are weird now, and she's like unlocked the weirdness with her assertion, his weirdness, right? With the assertion of, that, and this is what, when Mandos when Namo calls them, he doesn't so much say, "What have you done?" Right? His message is, "What is going on here?" Right?
Right. Well, that's his verbiage is kind of like, how could you do this?
Right. But I think he would know, like, they didn't. He would just be like,
I think that's right. He arrives there is kind of what I'm going for is like this, your strength is great, Luthien, but you cannot have done this.
Right. Yeah. Clearly we have a situation and I need to kick this up the chain, right? Is basically Namo's response.
Right. Well, see here, we had a lot of discussion about this.
Right.
My goal through most of this has been to make Namo saying, I have to consult an outside, I have to get a second opinion on this. That feels very much like that has to be a result of the song in order to maintain the dramatic.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
Like Luthien has to do a thing which causes that. If he says that he's going to do that, and then she sings, and then he goes and does it, what did the song do?
It's true. I hadn't thought of the way in which this kind of potentially, the scene is, especially the scene as we've been describing it here, kind of marginalizes the song. Potentially.
Well, I mean, and like, it's just, we need to know, like, why is the song?
So
why is the song important? Does it just mean that he goes to bat for them now instead of? But then now we have to show that whole scene in order for that to play out.
Yeah. What is the effect of the song? I mean, in a sense, we're signaling that there's something strange and outside the normal patterns that he's probably going to need to consult, Manwë and Iluvatar about from Luthien's first arrival, right?
Yeah.
The fact that she's weird and, people aren't really, there's no protocol for her already. And then that she can see the humans and the elves. I mean, there are lots of reasons already to think, okay, this is not going to be ye old standard judgment of Mandos going on here with her soul.
Right.
And then, of course, if we have with the whole breaking of the door of mourning and the Baron speaking thing and stuff, it does begin. When I say to that it could sort of undermine or marginalize the song. Like even before she sings, she doesn't even have to sing. Before Mandos has got to have a pretty clear idea that something quite extraordinary is going on, and that he needs to kick it up the chain. So the alternative then becomes, what then if it's not? Okay.
So one of the things that I did do was kind of make it so that Mandos is pretty clear about what's going on, what has to happen with Baron. He's got to go through the door, which is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, ultimately, they're gonna delay that. They're gonna forestall that. But like when they're in their interlude with Namo, he's convinced. He's like, Baron's got to go through the door. What happens to you? That's weird.
Right.
You're weird.
You're weird, but she's weird from the beginning.
Right.
Like,
I have known that you were going to be weird.
Right. There's nothing non-weird about
her. I
her.
can't
Yeah.
see what's going to happen to you.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
like I can see what's going to happen to Baron. He's going to go through the door.
Yes.
He must.
Yes.
I cannot see you. I cannot see what you're going, what to do with you.
Yes.
And then she sings the song, and that's when he's moved by the song, which is the way that, I mean, in the book, that's the way it's described. In fact, in the book, there's no discussion whatsoever. She goes to Mandos and sings the song, yes. And then he is convinced at that point, okay, I there's something different going on here. I have to do a thing.
Yeah, the reason, one of the reasons we're having like kind of trouble is that we've added stages, right, to that whole thing. But let's go back a second and think, what is the effect of the song on Mandos? That is to say, what does it change? What does it accomplish exactly? What does he do as a consequence of the song? No, wait. Let's ask the question back a further step. What does Namo do at all? Like, what's his role here? Is he just a messenger boy? Is he just like, hang on, no, I've got standing orders. This does not fit my standing orders. Got to go ask my superior. Be right back. I'm gonna go, and then like Manwë consults Iluvatar, and he comes back and he's like, okay, now I'm gonna do what they said. In which case, he's not taking any independent action at all, right? Or right. What is his action? What is actually in Namo's authority to decide in this case with Luthien and Baron? And then and we see that, then how does the song influence him in how he makes that decision? So Marie, what are you thinking there?
So the idea of their natures being what they are, he's well aware of that.
Yeah.
And so the whole Baron has to go through the door.
Yeah.
And Luthien cannot. No,
yes. In her current state. Yeah.
Right. He can't go through the door.
He won't fit.
That's not the problem, but he cannot go through that door. And neither can Luthien. So
right.
He knows this, and that's a done deal, and there's really nothing to do about it. The idea of going to ask Iluvatar for an exception to change that outcome is where he takes action, because if he just did what he's supposed to do based on who they are, then he sends Baron through the door. He keeps Luthien and Mandos. She's real sad about it, so she stays there probably forever, and it's over.
Mm-hmm. So it is a question of Namo going to bat for them.
Basically. He has to decide to go ask for a change in the nature of the world. Because that first option he presents to Luthien is just a nicer version of what would happen to her anyway.
Yeah.
Like, you can heal here and go to Valinor, and won't that be lovely?
Yeah. In other words, you can be an elf. Like, that's
Which she already is.
That's not special treatment. Yeah.
Right. There's nothing. So he could have offered that to her before talking to Iluvatar.
Sure.
It's interesting that and it changes the math a little bit, the way that we've constructed this. In the when he's presenting that choice, he doesn't say you can remain here in Mandos and heal. No. He says you can go to Valimar and heal,
Ah.
right?
I'm going to send you to the special suite. Yeah.
Well, based on the story that we've told up until this point, maybe he doesn't want her in there trying to break things.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I've got a good place for you. Far from here. That's yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the idea is that that's someplace you go after you've been re-embodied.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so he's offering the
I'm giving you kind of a
re-embodiment.
fast track option. Is the
Right.
So there's okay.
The healing spirit and body together again. Go live in a lovely place where nothing bad ever happens to anybody.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot like Doriath, except better.
Except better. Yeah. Yeah.
So
please stop talking to the humans and messing with them.
Exactly right. Can we please just let the operation run smoothly like it usually does? Yeah.
Right. So the idea of Luth moving Namo to pity is he finds a solution for her that was not on the table beforehand.
Yes.
And he can't do it by himself, which is why he has to kick it up the chain.
Right.
But
he doesn't have the authority to execute the thing he wants to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not him just saying, I don't know what to do here. Better check in with the boss man.
Right.
It's I can't help you.
Right. I have
but
a plan.
If I talk to my manager,
right, exactly,
there might be something we can do here, but I don't have the authority to fix it.
Exactly. I have a plan. I can't enact that plan, but I'm going to put in a word with the person who can enact my plan, and we'll see if we can get it done. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that is there. That the trouble is that we're not giving Namo a lot of lines to explain what he's doing, because you can't go from Luthien singing about grief and the marring of Arda and the third theme of the music of the Aegnor to Namo going, I should probably go talk to my boss about this.
Right.
Like
you bring up some good points.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. Like you can't do that transition. So the way Nick's written it is we see Vira's tapestry.
Yeah.
To understand what's happening, to keep it at that very high emotional point where it's being expressed without words is great. Again, he can't explain himself.
Just like Footnote. Yeah. Love the tapestries.
Well, I just really liked that part because we could see Vira making it. So the fact that there's tapestries everywhere is cool, but that's her voice in this.
Yes.
And without seeing her working on it, it might not be obvious to the viewer that the tapestry on the wall have anything to do with the woman sitting in the corner. So I liked that a lot.
So quick. All right. So one other element here. So the pity that he's going to show is that he is going to he's going to intercede with his boss to intercede with his boss to make an exception for Luthien. And the exception is that she can become mortal and therefore not be, that he's going to fix the problem that she's singing, that she was realizing about before, that she's singing about now, this permanent separation, this thing which is like at the very core, the fabric of the marring of Arda. But the resurrection deal, that's a separate package, right? I mean, if he's going to grant her mortality, he could just be like, but of course you're already dead. So and he would still be doing her a huge favor to be like, and now you can go through the door of mourning with him and I won't separate you.
We didn't put this in the dialogue. The way that we considered this was that she needs to, and I think this actually was from a discussion that the three of us had.
Oh no.
Oops.
So what Nick was about to tell you is that you forgot a conversation that we had earlier on this podcast.
Yes.
In which we agreed that Luthien needed to live life as a mortal in order to become fully mortal. So because she had never been embodied as a mortal, her spirit couldn't just be zapped and made mortal and sent through the door.
Right.
Now, there's a few challenges with working that into the script. One, again, do we want a bunch of exposition right at the key moment when Luthien is choosing whether or not to be mortal?
Yeah.
That's a question.
Yeah.
And then after she gets back, we have no dialogue with her. So the chances of explaining it are fairly limited there.
Right.
So Nick, I just reminded him of the earlier conversation and of why we're not. Oh,
No,
and,
we're good.
okay, and of why we don't have dialogue to that effect in the current script.
Yep. Yep. No. Okay. Yeah. I like that.
So the question is, what do you want to do about that?
Yes.
Sorry, my computer decided that now was the perfect time to restart,
to
and work
reboot.
on
Yeah.
updates.
Yeah. Yeah.
Midnight.
Yeah.
I told it to do it at 2:00 this morning, but apparently it ignored me. So
I always try to convince mine to do it at 9 a.m. and it never believes me. But anyway, so okay. So in other words, how the resurrection deal comes in could even be a sort of a surprise to Luthien, in the sense that she's going to be granted mortality, and she could immediately think like, oh, so I get to go through the door of mourning too. Deal. Great. Yes, totally choose that. Right. And then it's after that, basically, that Namo's like, yeah, so no, it's more complicated than that. Anyway, because it really is like the extended package, that he's explaining to her. I mean, even in the book, that's how it comes across, right? Like, you're choose basically like a really, a slightly souped up version of your normal fate, right? Or choose mortality, stay with Baron, go through the door, and you don't know what happens, right? So when she's not choosing resurrection, right? She's not like, oh yeah, send me back. That's totally, but that gets added on. They're like, and like, with this comes resurrection and, a bonus set of knives. Like it's explained after the choice, right? So, I think we don't have to link it explicitly to that. It can just be explained like, well, no, this is how that's going to work.
That's good, because once he presents the choices, as soon as or you could become mortal choices on the table, we know it's like, yes, I want to be with him and I'm going to choose that one.
Yes.
Like there's really no tension between those two choices.
No, it's no
but to have Namo issue a surprise
right
at the end would still be like, oh, okay, there's still some new information here.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it can still be good if Namo is inserting something after the choices are on the table.
Yeah, for sure. Because the other thing, and here's the other thing that I really love about this, is that it's one of the things that I have felt for a long time, and that not everybody comes out of this story with. I think that many people emerge from the Baron and Luthien story believing that the ultimate escape from bondage is the resurrection. Right? Like the escape from death. Like they escaped even from death, right? And came back to life. That's the final great. I mean, even thinking of what Tolkien talks about, the great escape, right? The meaning the escape from death. I mean, he's clearly kind of playing with that at the end of this story. But the great irony of the end of the Baron and Luthien story is that thing which he calls the great escape, capital G, capital E, which is the mortal's escape from death. Baron dies and is resurrected and comes back from the dead. But it's not the point. It's not the resurrection. It's not that isn't in fact the final escape. And so I like the way in which especially if we do the delay thing, right? And it's just like, oh, NPS, like since you've already done this, since you've already achieved, this sort of escape, then you also I have no choice but to resurrect the both of you. For a little bit.
I'm now never going to be able to watch The Great Escape the same way again. Now I'm always going to see it as a metaphor in which
for mortality,
German prison camp is the world we live in,
Exactly.
and the outside world is
That's even the metaphor Tolkien uses
death.
in fairy stories when he's talking about escape.
From a prison, yeah. Well, and that's the whole point, is that in a human story, escape from death is really cool and amazing. So
Yes.
there's lots of stories about people either trying to accomplish that or what the effects might be, blah, blah, blah. But this is an elvish story, so they don't care about escape from death. They care about escape from deathlessness.
Right.
And the only one who can escape that is Luthien.
Right. But like, that's the cool thing, is that both of those stories, like both the human kind of escape story about immortality and the elf kind of escape story about mortality, neither of them see the point. Like the Beren and Luthien story is like the real truth that underlies like both of those things, both the elvish impulse towards deathfulness and the human impulse towards deathlessness, right? Are both of them like understandable, natural impulse, but they're both kind of missing the point, right? And the point ultimately is like the one that the Beren and Luthien...
We should be together.
Exactly. This is it. It's the escape. Ultimately, it's the escape from the separation. That's the final escape.
So, I have a question that is now reminding me of that. This is something that has kind of always bothered me. So, Tuor and Idril's fates are not clear.
No, not at all.
Right?
Not at all.
But are they fated to be separated for all eternity, no matter what happens? I mean, Arendil and Elwing are weird, obviously, because they're both really half-elven. Like, the text keeps talking about Arendil as if he's human, but we all know that he isn't.
No.
He just isn't.
No.
So, the general idea is here what Namo tells Beren and Luthien. Beren has to go through the door, and he can't do anything to change that. Luthien changing to become mortal and then having the ability to go through the door is a thing that can happen if Iluvatar says so. So that's a change in nature that is possible. But taking the gift of men away from mortals who are men, or at least partially men, is not a thing. So that means that in general, the fate of Tuor and Idril should be separate, unless they get some kind of special dispensation we don't know about, or unless the story where Tuor becomes an elf also is true. So,
well, exactly. This is
the story where he lives in a pineapple under the sea or something like that with Olmo.
We could really do the curveball move. Like, let's go with the undersea pineapple story.
There's.
And then if anybody challenges us, we'll say, because this was most true to the spirit of Tolkien, that's why we did this. But anyway, no. Right.
But so the other couple is Dior and Nimloth.
Yeah.
They're also in a similar situation. So by showing...
Dior actually is wholly human, right?
Entirely human. 100% human.
He should be... Dior should be mortal because he has mortal parents.
Yep.
And Nimloth should be fully an elf. So they should be separated at death. But anyway, to go back to this episode, we've got the Andreth Aegnor thing in there specifically because there is an example of somebody else who tried to do this and it didn't work very well and they got separated forever.
Yeah.
Because they never got married. That's their mistake. But it's possible that... Right. And it's possible... other married couples are going to go through that same separation.
Yep.
The whole dispensation for the half-elven is meant to remedy that. But part of Art of Mard is, sometimes you get separated for the end of eternity, and that's really terrible. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Tuor, Idril, and Dr. Nimloth are both probably very unhappy endings.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think we need to prepare for this eventually. Of course, this is not a now problem, but certainly this is opening the door, right, to all of those questions, which we get to deal with later on. And unlike Tolkien doing a longer form adaptation of the kind that we're doing, we don't have the luxury of burying it in a "it is said" paragraph,
Yeah. Like, maybe it all worked out for them.
Yeah, we don't know. Though there's rumors that this happened, but who knows? Anyway, moving on. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have some challenges there, and it's possible that we're gonna have to make Tuor and Idril have a tragic ending.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, everyone expects Dior and Nimloth to, because they get killed in a
There's nothing
kinslaying,
non-tragic about like their entire lives, but yes.
Right. Yeah. So like that's
agreed.
fine. But Tuor and Idril, you're like, no.
I
Almo
totally
likes
agree
them.
with David Michael Roberts that the fate of the half-elven's a late game patch after release day. Yeah, totally agree. But anyway,
Well,
okay.
we're gonna have kids. Oops.
Yeah, we'll. That's a. This all.
Yeah.
These are all really fun problems that will arise later on. However, I think that's fine. I think we're good. I mean, again, we still have the empty socket where the song will sit, in order to really see how that's going to bring things together. But again, the thing that I love most about how this is all structured and how this is all working is the way in which it can make clear the fact that, like, escape from death, like the resurrection, is not the big escape, is not the final, that when we come to find out what the release from bondage is, it's only in this episode that we've really learned. We've had hints, right? But we have now, and it, Nick, it passes the test, right? It passes the test. Like, when you look back over everything that we've said about, like, all the patterns of prison and escape from prison that we've done all the way through, the through line that connected all of the escapes from prison earlier on was the prioritization of them being together, right? Of their togetherness. So that to realize that separation is the thing, that they're escaping from, is a beautiful kind of, like, it's a thing we've always known from, episode 4 at least, right? And yet it's also a new, a new realization, a new processing of that. So I like it. Awesome, Kanji. Looking forward to the song.
Yes, one of the people working on it. Yes.
That's it. It'll be good. Okay. Before we go, Melian. Loved the healing of the winter of Thingol. All that stuff was good. Again, that amazing scene where Melian is hearing what he's thinking about. All that stuff is great. Here's another suggestion for which I have no remedy. And that is, I don't know how to convey. I didn't feel like it hit hard enough, but I don't know how to hit harder. Her reaction, Melian's reaction. Like, there's that big line, right? And that, like, her grief in that moment was greater than any grief had ever been in the history of the world, right? And it's like, it happens quick. It happens without dialogue. It shouldn't have dialogue, I think. But anyway, so I have no idea how to convey the incredible weight of that moment in a short scene in which she doesn't even have any dialogue, right? But anyway, it felt like it went by really fast. And as I say, I have no idea what to do with it, but.
We can touch on it again in the epilogue when we have all those tapestries we're saying. The first tapestry is Baron and Luthien happy together in Tolgalen.
Yep.
Which is the reason you get the full map of Beleriand, because it's the only way to get Tolgalen on it.
Right.
But then we could go from there to something about Melian's grief, of Melian alone on a tapestry. Oh, Nick, you're hard to hear.
Oh, yeah, we got microphone issues. Oh, wait, hang on. Are you still muted or something? No. Nope, not quite yet. Here.
How about now?
There we go.
Okay. I have returned. We never leave. It's all one tapestry in the end.
Yeah. So
but
she can be separate from them.
What we could do is, like, it wouldn't be that hard to spend a little bit more time with just the two of them, because we go in a pretty rapid sequence. But it could be we could go from the scene where they first return, instead of going directly into the we are presenting them scene. We could go to a scene where it's just Luthien and Melian sitting together, and we can see Melian's grief and Luthien, like, consoling her, with the, like, this is what needed to be, mother.
Yeah. It would be.
I would rather put in there than try to then get away from the path to Erendil, which is what the tapestry scene at the end is all about. Right.
Yeah. No, I guess I said I can't. It's not like they were going to add a scene and a bunch of dialogue or something like that. I mean, it's it may even be something that we have to kind of circle back to, in a future season with Melian.
And we can always do that.
Yeah. To make sure that people don't miss it. I guess it's true that the sort of the ideal handling of this here under these circumstances is to show enough so that people who understand, people who are really tracking or people who know the story will see it and will get what her look means in that moment. But we don't have time to sit and talk about it and really develop it. So for everybody who doesn't get it, we can do that later, and then they can rewatch the episode and be like, oh, that was what was happening there.
Right. As long as it's there. But I don't think that adding a little vignette where that, like a little piece where we illustrate that a little bit more clearly is would be a problem at all.
Yeah, the tapestries were fun. I admit I did not see the Tom Bombadil cameo coming in the tapestry. That was pretty cool.
We ran out of time.
Yeah, I know. It was like
this was a tough one because
that was an 11th hour Tom Bombadil cameo.
It's not the first.
Right.
We had one during the
Rising of the Sun
eclipse scene. Yeah, the Rising of the Sun.
Yep.
Yeah, which was last episode again.
Yep.
So it's we got to be careful. We can't do that too many times.
Well, we have Easterlings next season to play with, so we can go east a bit.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah.
That basically came out of our discussion in episode 12 about how Tom and Goldberry had basically a perpetual wedding.
Yeah.
Right. So trying to relate their story to Baron and Luthien's story, it's like, well, they can walk by the tapestry.
Every day's our anniversary.
And being, I mean, Ted Naismith, who did my background here, is quite right about the willows, right? That, down there in Tolgallan. So, yeah.
And by the way, did you notice the young willow?
Oh, I did. I did. Yes. Young lad willow. Yes, I did notice young lad willow. I did.
Happier times.
Happier times. Exactly.
Yes. The scene where Luthien returns, like, I was trying to figure out how to do Thingol's reaction. And so I put myself in his shoes for a minute, and I thought about it, and I was like, okay, well, that would be kind of untoward to do to an adult person,
right?
Like the way I would react to my child coming back to me from the dead,
right?
God forbid.
Right.
But Thingol's the tallest person that ever was.
Yes, I was thinking about that.
And
yes.
he's, a mighty elf. So, yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Why
Why
not?
not? Why wouldn't he throw her
Why
up in
would
the
he
air
throw her
like
up
she
in
was
the
a
air?
4-year-old?
Yes. And Melian's like, she's actually more fragile than you think. Hang on.
If she breaks a bone, that's bad.
Yes, exactly. Right. She might get septic. You never know. These things happen with these mortals. Yeah. No, I thought that was great. Yeah.
The discussion between Baron and Luthien after the doom is laid was something that we talked a lot about, and so I would like to get your input on that to make sure that we didn't take that too far, or if...
Let's see. Remind me of that. Their dialogue there. What are they? I'm not recalling the scene off the top of my head.
Yeah, Baron basically is like, because she's like, oh yeah, no, I'm all in for that second option. Yeah, and Baron's like, wait, hang on.
Bring on the mortality. Okay, right.
Let's just think about this for just a second. Just think.
To which she basically answers, "Dude, we talked about this. Like you were there in episode 9, right? Like It's actually a really good moment. I mean, what I like about that as an opportunity is for her to basically have the chance to vocalize like this. We agreed a doom was laid upon us to be together and to achieve, like, this is the thing that we were to achieve. Like we are, our hands are finally, meeting across the void. Not just for a moment, as everybody thought, right? Mm-hmm. They were humoring us. Not that she says this, but they were humoring us in Doriath, right? They were humoring us. They were kind of laughing at, not exactly. There was more weeping than laughing, but still, like, there was,
they did not take this seriously.
Yeah, the wedding, like the wedding in which our, hands were being joined, that was like a mockery. In a sense, right? That was just the foretaste of this, and this is it.
It's now a kangaroo wedding.
Yeah, this is our true wedding. This is our this is our doom. This is the and now, like, we have escaped, and we've escaped from the separation. We have crossed the we've crossed the void. We have so like, she doesn't have to like belabor it hideously, but giving her a chance to actually say it in words, I think might be no bad thing. I mean, it's some pretty abstract metaphysics we're doing throughout this episode, so actually being a little bit explicit about that, it's pretty good, I think, to have that opportunity.
I wanted a chance to both illustrate Baron's faith, that it's going to work out okay, while still having, like, I still don't want the people I love to die.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And also to give him a choice too. Like, Mandos, like, Namo asks him, okay, so you're okay waiting. You could go right now, but you're okay waiting.
Yes.
Which shouldn't be a given.
Right.
Not in the world that Tolkien paints for us.
Yeah. But no, I just love the way in which, because I mean, like, he's been doing this. He's had this impulse. Like, I'm going to leave you behind and go to Angband by myself. It's the same thing. It's the same conversation, right?
Yes.
And so the way in which all of those conversations have basically set up this conversation and enable her to just be like, kind of smack him gently upside the head and say, "Oh, Baron, come on. Like, we've talked about this." Right?
You really think that this is...
Right. This is the same. This is everything else we did was just preparation. This is the thing. Right. So yeah, I love that.
I think the only thing we have to talk about would probably just be the last couple of things, like the scene with Maevros and the brothers, which obviously had to happen to some degree.
Yeah. I was actually a little bit surprised. I was actually a little bit surprised at the degree to which we did. I wasn't expecting, and it's not that it was like a super long scene, but it was longer than I expected it actually to be.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like it came closer to actually describing, the union of Maedhros and the, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, the scene is meant to set up what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have something hanging over us for next season. And also we need to show the relationship of the story of Baron and Luthien with the union of Maedhros and how clearly it inspires that, and essentially the whole rest of the Legendaria,
Right.
which is part of the the final tag sequence.
So I wonder though. I felt like this scene was a little long. It was like either too much or too little in a sense, right? Like I felt like it was kind of fitting into that. Like I think I would have been content with a shot of Maedhros standing on the parapets, right, looking north, and turning to Maglor and saying like, it's time, or like, you know what I mean? Like some guy, because we don't need to know the whole story, like the whole plan and the whole rationale behind the plan, because we can get that in episode 1 of season 7, right? So, we have time to get there and we can develop it more, and the counter arguments, and the we should go for the Silmarillion's instead, and the like, maybe let's not, and all that kind of thing. Like we'll have time for all that stuff, obviously, in the beginning of season 7. But yeah, I mean, the idea that there should be a link to Maedhros and to the decision, to show how the Union is being inspired by this, I like that. But again, I didn't think it necessarily needed the whole discussion in that way.
I was concerned that if we didn't have an actual scene, that would be kind of not non sequitur, because it's not like, I mean, Maedhros was in episode 1, but that was really the one of the main reasons why I wanted to have an actual scene where we wrapped up all the stuff with, because Celeborn and Curufin were there for half the season, and
they were last seen riding a horse off into the distance and being chased by Huon. Right.
So, we needed to resolve them too. So we needed to resolve the
Feanorian storyline.
As well. So having a discussion where we set up what's coming.
No, I can see the argument for it. I just again, I think it's true we wouldn't have gotten closure on Celegorm and Curufin specifically. But I think I would have been satisfied with, or maybe Maedhros is looking north and says something like, Morgoth can be assailed after all, like, so he can be, Angband is not impregnable, or whatever.
He's got to. I mean, like, I would like him to at least hear the actual line, because we put that line in Fingolfin's mouth last season, so that means that it has to get to him through Fingin. And when we talked about this, we toyed with the idea of the scene instead being a scene between Maedhros and Fingin.
Yeah.
But that felt a little bit too. This is now season 7.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas this is more directly a reaction to.
Right. As a teaser to set up what's to come, you don't want to give away the whole thing. So having Fingin and Maedhros planning something would be too far.
No, I agree. But I was having the same kind of feeling about
this.
Yeah, Caranthir saying, "Hey, let's attack Doriath," and them saying, "Or maybe not," and yeah.
Right. So if you don't want to explicitly get attacking Doriath off the table in this scene, we can tweak it so that that's not clear. Like. Maglor's the one who's kind of like, no, we should definitely be working for a peaceful solution, you guys.
Right.
We can make Maglor be a little quieter, and therefore.
Yeah,
it's that's still on the table, maybe. But we're not trying to set up a sack of Doriath yet.
Right.
So it's kind of important that we are connecting Angband, Silmaril. If Baron and Luthien can go steal one, why not? Let's
Right.
get some other elves in on this plan.
right.
Right.
Right. And so maybe as long as we can take out the resistance to violence to a degree, but keep the line where Mithras is kind of chiding them, like you're saying that Baron and Luthien can do what you can, like can do it, but you can't. So
Right.
that's what we're doing.
Right. Right.
Kind of harping on the pride of the two of his brothers who were just royally
Right.
demolished by.
So I'm imagining this tag of Curafin just saying, "So how hard can it be?" Or what? Yeah.
But okay, so we can definitely trim that down.
Yeah, I would have been content. As I say, I would have been content with one line. I'd be like, even if you want to include them both, like if you want to show them all together, right? And then like all we hear is Mithroth saying something like, as David Michael Roberts says, "It can be done," right? Mm-hmm. And Curaf, and then one other person like Curafin, probably saying something ominous, about the Silmaril or something.
That would get the job done, but we would lose Amras expressing the complete nihilistic attitude of none of this even matters.
Yeah, loved it.
Which is very on brand for him, but not something we really get to hear very often.
No, it's not. But again, I was thinking like I just could wait for that. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear that, because that was the thing with the Finged Mithras thing. Is obviously I would love to have a conversation between those two characters, but I'd like a full episode to play with that.
Exactly.
For this though, what's happening in the scene is not just like, oh, let's just sum up what's going on with the Silmaril. It's the Oath is awake again.
Yeah,
and at play and active here. And to get that concept across, there needs to be a little bit more than just it's time to do something.
Right. No. I wasn't trying to capture that in that line, but yeah, I still think it could be done in 30 seconds. I still think it could be done with the camera is sweeping in behind maybe Caligorm and Curafin, or maybe Curafin and Maglor, right? As they're coming down the hall or something. And we're hearing Caligorm talking about, or Curafin talking about how we must, there's a Silmaril in Doriath. We must take the Silmaril. And Maglor making gentler noises, right? But he doesn't have to make loud noises, right? It's mostly what we mostly hear is Curafin. And then the camera is sweeping it, and there's Mithros facing the opposite direction from them, right? Saying, and he's looking out over the parapet to the north, and his and we're showing his different reaction, right? So we see the reaction of the Oath is a lot, is in play again, but then we also get a teaser of Mithros's more constructive response to the pair. Anyway, I'm not saying it has to be like that. I'm just saying
we could definitely give it a put it on a diet for sure.
Yeah.
Unless you have anything that you want to touch on about the first two tags, I would like to talk about the third one for just a minute before we.
Which one was the third one?
The third one is in. It starts in Assyrian. That's the big tapestry reveal one.
The tapestry one is the third
one. The one that starts with the cottage of the dead that live.
Right.
And if anything, I wanted to bring up something in the logistics of the writing of it, because we've talked quite a bit about how in a spec script, which is what these are, essentially, you don't generally talk about camera moves and whatnot, because directors don't like that. They don't like when the scriptwriter tells them what to do.
Tells them what
with
to
the
do.
camera.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, there's some examples in here of the way that you see screenwriters get around that.
Right.
In the way that that is described, where if you read this, you'll see that I'm describing the details, and then more things and more things and more things, which implies a zoom out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't say at any point,
right? You must
the
zoom
camera
in
zooms out,
yeah.
or we see, So I wanted to mention that as a mechanical thing of the script writing, but also the implication of this tag is how this is all pointing at Arendil, which then everything about that points down to Lord of the Rings, which is why we end with Elrond standing, looking up at Arendil in the sky, which was just seen in the tapestry.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's great. I loved it. I loved the sorry, the return to the tapestry at the end and the contextualizing of I love that, especially with the thing that I really loved most about that was also the way in which it hints very gently at the whole, like, the line of Luthien shall never fail kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I thought that was great. So yeah, no, loved it. Loved the tapestry thing. And the kind of nod to the fact that now that we've sort of seen behind the curtain, as it were, like we've seen the tapestried halls of Mandos, right? Where all of, like, present and past and future history is being woven there. That, like, to kind of return to it and give a kind of a glimpse of that, a glimpse of the future through the tapestries. It was great. Loved that. Yeah. Very good. So we did it. We did episode 13. We've done 6 seasons. We're not done with this whole season yet. We still have more things to talk about, but we finished the scripts. We finished the story. It's good. It's good. And now Nick can take a nap. So that's really good. That's really good. All right. So next up is going to be art discussion. So we have a little bit of a delay because Moot is next week. So our next session is going to be Thursday, July 6th, which is 3 weeks from tonight instead of 2 weeks from tonight. We're going to be talking about some of the creative contributions. Definitely remember, this is your final reminder. Anybody who wants to work on contributions, we can still include those in that discussion. We can look at things that people have suggested: sets, costumes, props, other kinds of artwork. We'll be showcasing those in July, and then. Nick, I hope you're going to submit your Roll20 map of the dungeons of... Sorry, just teasing you about that. That was fun. But anyway, so we're as I say, we're gonna talk about this stuff, and then we're going to, and then the final episode 2 weeks after that, on the 20th of July, will be music. And this is hopefully when we're going to get the song from episode 13. That'll be kind of the centerpiece of that. And then we'll talk about other musical contributions from the great film composer Philip Menzies as well. So looking forward to that. And thanks. Yeah. Is there going to be a big picture planning episode? We'll talk about that, I would expect, probably in the first episode of season 7.
Yeah.
That is the first session of season 7, as we kind of get our bearings and think through, make sure we get the scope of what we're going to cover in season 7. And we usually kind of look forward from there. one of the real big questions that we've still never really answered, though I know bunches of people have ideas, but we've never actually had the discussion yet of how we're going to handle the Tuor and the Turin stories. Are we going to do them in parallel, or are we going to do them in series? It's really interesting. I was minded of that when we were just doing the Wandering of Hurin material and the End of the Grey Annals and War of the Jewels discussion about a month ago. When in the Annals, Tolkien was going back and forth between Turin and Tuor and juxtaposing them that way. Anyway. And are we going to add the extra bits in the Wanderings of Hurin? Oh, yeah, exactly. Really fascinating questions. So... yeah, but that we'll talk about that in season 7. That'll be a bit later.
After season 7.
I know. I mean, like,
yeah, none of those choices are going to be made in season 7.
No. But we will probably glance at the overview of like the road ahead.
Sure.
There.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're coming in on the end of the first age. It's not that far away.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think we might be able to map. It would be fun.
How many seasons we have left?
Yeah. Exactly. To have
to the War of Wrath. Yeah,
to the War of Wrath. Exactly how the shape of all that goes. So we will see. Next season, I think, is pretty clear. So it's not really, we could, if we wanted to, push it off another season and wait to have that discussion at the beginning of season 8.
Yeah, but given that we know pretty much exactly where season 7 ends.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of wiggle room. Right, but not much. Like, do you end with the taking of Hurin, or do you end with the defiance of Morgoth by Hurin? Like, but those are finer distinctions.
Or the death of Rion.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, there's
a few things at the end of that season that are. Is it just the end of 7 or the beginning of 8?
But we all pretty much know where we're in. I mean, we all pretty much know we're going to be in the Fens of Sarek in episode 13, right? I mean, it's pretty much more or less what we're looking at. So,
yes.
Yeah. Anyhow. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you guys in 3 weeks. Thanks, Nick. Great job. As I say, this was a really, really hard one to do. So really appreciate that.
It was.
It was. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. And I will say, as always, thanks for listening and Godspeed.